What's up, guys? I'm BTC. The Overwatch Blizzcon panel is over, and we got an absolutely massive amount of information, new maps, hero role and balance changes, all kinds of new game modes, tons and tons of stuff. Let's get to it. The first thing, and this is absolutely massive, is that 2 capture point game mode is being removed entirely from competitive and probably also from quick play as well. It's still going to be around in other forms. Maybe those maps like Hanamura and Anubis will pop up in the arcade, and you can still use them in custom maps and stuff like that. But the competitive version is being removed. Essentially, a lot of people don't like playing on that type of map, and it was just going to take too much effort in order to rework some of them. Already, we have Horizon and Paris that are not available in competitive because they're not really balanced properly. So rather than wasting time on that, they're just working on new stuff instead. Now, these maps, again, you can still use them in the custom matches and stuff, but they're also going to be available in a new thing, which is called the hero missions. I'll come back to the hero mission thing in just a minute, but continuing on the maps, they showed off 3 new maps. The first is Rome, and this is going to be the new game mode type, which is Push. We saw this last year. Essentially, it's a tug of war where there is an Omnic in the middle, and you have to kind of take him over for your team, and then you push an object, and whichever team gets it the farthest is going to be the winner. Think of it as payload tug of war. The Rome map has been kind of updated to what it might look like at some point in the future, so there's a lot of Overwatch stuff that's kind of included in it. But there's also a lot of real-world things as well, a lot of that architecture. Most notably, the Colosseum is included as well. The second map is New York City. I don't know what type of map this is going to be, what game mode, but this, again, looks absolutely amazing. And they've taken the real-world city, and again, they have kind of advanced it into the future, lots of Overwatchy type stuff in it. You have Grand Central Station and other things. So this, again, looks like an amazing map. And then the other map that we got to see is India. So we saw a part of this during the Symmetra mini event that we had a little while ago, but now we get to see a much bigger look at the overall map of India. And this just, again, absolutely amazing design. They have really stepped it up with the way that these new maps look. Next up, the tank role is getting a complete overhaul. They are reworking how that character class is going to be played in the game. This means that every character in the tank role is getting some kind of a change. It might be a small change on one of the characters and maybe a bigger, almost kind of a rework, or maybe, a sort of rework on some of the other characters. They didn't give a lot of specifics. They did show us that Reinhardt is getting a bunch of changes to how his character plays, but this is kind of more on the smaller kind of rework side of things, where, for example, Reinhardt is now going to have 2 fire strikes, and he's also going to be able to stop his charge midway through. You have significantly more control over your character when you're charging. You can't completely turn around a corner, but you now can turn way more than you could before. There's a massive amount of control during Reinhardt's charge than you ever had before. For a while, the talk about the tank role was that they could go in one of 2 ways. You could either take all the characters and make them into more tanky style characters like Reinhardt and Orisa, where you have the barriers and you kind of sit back and protect your team. Or you can have other characters like Zarya and Roadhog who were more about dealing damage and being aggressive towards the enemy team. What they ended up deciding is going towards the Roadhog method. And this is where all the characters in the tank role are now going to be essentially fat DPS. They're going to be bruisers or brawlers. That is how the new tank role is going to be. And I think that this is a really good idea, because one of the things that people don't like about playing the tank role is that you just have to kind of sit back, right? They don't like sitting back and holding up a barrier. That's not a lot of fun. That's why you have so few people that want to play the tank role. But now the tank characters are going to be able to get a lot more aggressive, and they can start doing a lot more pew-pew, a lot more DPS. They're not going to be as good as a DPS, to be sure, So this new role for the tanks is going to be way more aggressive than what we currently have. Not only that, but they're also adding new passive abilities that are going to apply to all characters in a certain type of role. So for example, the tank characters are all going to get an enhanced knockback resistance. So what Reinhardt currently has for his normal passive, all of the tanks are going to get that. Is Reinhardt going to get something else as his normal passive? I don't know, but all the tanks are now going to have knockback resistance. Then all the DPS are going to have a slightly faster move speed. This will help some of them so that they can better position or so they can flank. And then also for the support characters, all of them are now going to have a natural healing that will kick in after they have gone a certain amount of time without taking any damage. So just like what Mercy has for her current healing, or with Zenyatta with his shield regen, that sort of thing, all of the support characters are now going to have that natural healing that will kick in after a certain amount of time has gone by when they haven't taken any damage. Now, I should point out that they did say that these certain role passives are still in the testing phase and that they might get changed at some point in the future, but currently that is what we have. So every tank is going to have knockback resistance, every DPS is going to move a little bit faster, and every support is going to have natural healing. Speaking of characters though, we didn't get to see any of the new ones that haven't already been mentioned or shown previously. However, they did show off a little bit more of Sojourn. We got to see some gameplay of that character and find out what the primary and secondary attacks are. So it looks like the primary attack is going to be just some sort of auto attack with a rifle type thing, and the secondary is going to be a railgun, which is a very powerful single shot type attack. It does a massive, massive amount of damage. Think of it as almost a full charge of what Widow can do, except there's not going to be any scope or no zoom in or anything like that. You just have to use your normal crosshair, and if you have super good aim, you'll be able to do a good amount of damage. We don't know how much time it's going to take to charge this. That's all probably going to be balanced, because it did look like there was a couple of attacks that hit with that railgun, but just didn't eliminate the enemy. So it's not going to do a one-hit elimination every single time, unlike in some other games that have railguns, but it's still going to be a very powerful weapon. Another thing to mention is that they're completely redoing the sound effects for most of the weapons and the abilities and the attacks, and it just sounds so much better than what we have with Overwatch 1. The new sound effects, everything, it feels and sounds like you actually are using those weapons in the game. Another thing they're doing with all the characters is updating the appearance. We've already seen this with a bunch of the other characters. Last time it was Reinhardt and Mercy and Genji and some others. This time around it's McCree, Reaper, Pharah, and Widow, and we got to see what their new looks are going to be. For the most part, they're still going to resemble what they did in the previous game because they still want you to recognize the character, but they just made the textures look a lot better. They added some detail here and there. They also added pieces of armor. For example, Reaper has a little bit more armor on him now. With Pharah, her suit looks a lot more high-tech than before. They also changed the colors on it a little bit. So they've made some changes to the character to just overall improve their appearance, but they're still very recognizable as to what they were before. Next up are the hero missions that I mentioned earlier. Not to be confused with the story missions, the campaign. That is, just like what it sounds like, it's the story of Overwatch 2. It's when you go through and you fight Null Sector and Talon, and they have all these cutscenes and all that sort of stuff, and it's telling the story of the characters in Overwatch getting back together. That's the story mode. The hero missions are kind of like that, but they are self-contained. And what you end up with is you have this map, and you have all these different possible assignments that you can pick, and you go to Numbani, or you go to King's Row, or Hanamura, or any of the other maps, and you have now objectives. So it turns all of the normal maps into what is essentially an archives mission type map. And there's a bunch of different ones. You might have to escort something, like a payload type thing. You might have to defend locations. One of them looked like you had a flag that you had to move from one spot to another. Others you have to scavenge and go and pick up different things throughout the map. All the while you're fighting members of Talon and Null Sector and whoever else that they have as the bad guys. So this is another type of cooperative PvE game mode, and you're going to get to use the talents for your characters and all that sort of stuff, but there's not going to be any big story that's attached to this. Now, another really cool thing about these maps is that they're adding in different types of maps for the same thing. So you're going to have a daytime map, you have a nighttime map, you have another one that is kind of like in the evening. You also have snowstorms and sandstorms, and it's going to start raining, and there's going to be all kinds of weather effects. So there's going to be a lot of variety in these different types of maps. As for the talent system, this is what we saw last time. It was very simple. You only had a couple of talents available, level 1, level 10, and level 20. That is gone. It now has been completely changed, and it looks like this. There are now a huge amount of talents that you can choose from. This is a lot similar to what you would see in World of Warcraft or Diablo 2, that sort of stuff. So you have these huge talent trees that allow you to specialize in different things. And again, these are going to be for the hero missions and for the story missions. This is not something that you can use in the normal quick play and the competitive modes. So just a couple of examples here. You've got the barrier boon, which has been selected, and that says the barrier field heals Reinhardt for 10%, 20, 30% of the damage it absorbs, while the barrier field has 50% or more health. Then also on this screen, you can see the armor up has been selected, and that gains armor equal to 3, 6, or 10% of Reinhardt's maximum health. And then you've got a bunch of them here for Soldier 76. You can also see what Soldier 76 looks like now a little bit. He's got the mustache and the big beard thing going. He looks even older than he did before. And you can see this one here, the rifle deals 0.5, 1%, or 1.5 more damage every bullet that hits an enemy while the trigger remains held, and using Helix rockets maintains a trigger hold. You can see a ton of different ones here, and you've got one for Mercy, which is the staff range increased by 10, 20, and 30%. We've got another one for Reinhardt here where enemies take 10, 20% more damage from all sources while knocked down from Earth Shatter, and they stay knocked down for 15 or 30% more. So you can see that every single one of these talents, it's not just 1 point that you put into them. Again, it's kind of like the other games where you can put in 1 point, 2, 3 points, whatever, and so on and so forth. Here's another one, the overhead smash. Hitting with the rocket hammer swings 2 times in a row now causes the next swing to deal 25% more damage, stunning the target for 0.5 seconds. So as you can see, there are a ton of different options for how you can play the character, lots of different styles with how the abilities are going to work. Right now, we don't know anything about how moving the talents are going to be. If you want to change them, if you want to respec the character, whether it's going to be as simple as unselecting a couple of the talents and then selecting some of the other ones, or if you're going to have to lose some levels, or what it's going to take in order to change those talents. Also, we don't know if you're going to be able to level up every character, because right now there's, over 30 characters. By the time the game comes out, we might be close to 40 characters. So we don't know how that's going to be handled, if you can level up all of them, or if you're only going to be able to pick 3, 4, 5 characters, and those are the ones that you level up. And then if you want to try something else, you might have to delete one of those characters, kind of like having multiple characters on a World of Warcraft server or something like that. But for right now, we don't know any of those details. Now, I'm sure everyone is wondering, what about a release date? Unfortunately, they didn't give us one. They didn't even hint at any kind of a release date. They just said they have lots of stuff that they like and that they need to work on, and they want to make sure that it's right before they release the game. And they didn't give even a little hint as to whether it's going to be later this year or next year or when it's going to be. I still think that it's probably going to be sometime next year, but they definitely did not give any kind of idea on when the release date is going to be. Having said all that, we still got a tremendous amount of information from them. I expected a couple teases and hints here or there, but they showed us not 1, not 2, but 3 new maps. They showed us new game modes. They told us they're removing the 2 capture point, that the tank role is getting completely reworked and overhauled, that they're adding new different role passives. They showed us what several of the characters are going to look like with their new appearance. They showed us some gameplay footage of Sojourn. They didn't, give us all the details on the character, but they do have to keep some stuff hidden right for now. But they still showed us a ton of stuff that is going to be included in the game, way more than I expected they were going to show us. And I think overall, this was a really great BlizzCon. I think they gave us a ton of good information. Unfortunately, we didn't get any news about Overwatch 1. Everything that we saw, all that cool stuff, isn't going to happen until Overwatch 2. It's possible that some of the smaller things might be included with Overwatch 1, might get released beforehand, but for the most part, we have to wait until Overwatch 2 for all of that stuff. So what do you guys think about all of this new information, about the new talent trees, about the new maps, about just everything, the new character designs for McCree and Reaper and some of the others? What do you think about all of this? Let me know down below. A big thanks to all the Paragons and other channel members for all your support. If you'd like to become one and grab some cool rewards, click the join button down below. Also, if you enjoyed the video, drop a like before you leave. And remember, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault.